All right. Brian, Mr. Best Last Name Ever Flynn is coming in hot against the bench press. Dan, he says bench press is a fake circus trick. It's for clowns. It's
I agree.
3 people care about it. 3. Who are those? And then he says, "Happy Thanksgiving to
And I
everyone."
don't.
And happy Thanksgiving to you, Brian. Dan, is the bench press for clowns? Should you put on the red nose?
Well, I don't. You know, he's absolutely correct. I mean, it's one of those things. What happened early, I think, in the kettlebell community is that, and what's the he writes Brooks Kubik. Okay, Brooks was one of the first real voices of weightlifting that wasn't high intensity training online, and he came up with a phrase called dinosaur training. And what these dinosaur trainers did is they basically said that everything that happened after 1956, because of performance, Diana Ball specifically, but you had to throw out everything from 1956 to, it's like the guy who came up with the word Dark Ages. He literally said there was Greece, there was Rome, there was this dark period, and now there's me. Lorenzo Ballo was his name. And I've always thought that was hilarious because the name Dark Period, because the world was waiting for him to be born. I always love that phrase. The Dark Ages is a bad phrase.
It is, and that's something that is really interesting because it's like one of those things that like I was taught that there were the Dark Ages growing up in school, and then later came that that's a total myth, and most historians say like this is a complete misrepresentation of the actual history of matter, right? Yeah.
And it's also ist, but we won't go. Yeah.
Back to the bench press.
So what happened is in the 1990s and the early aughts, it felt like it was like, people were pulling out the old 1936 Strengths and Healths, what I have. They were pulling out, Sandow and Louis Cyr and all those guys and saying that these guys had it right. And by the way, they did. Harry Pascal, he was the guy famous for Bosco, the big mustache guy who with the waistline of about 3 inches and the huge upper body. And, if you were doing Pascal's workouts, the Bosco workout, the muscle molding program, God, it was like 6 exercises. It was like the military press, the 3 power lifts and curls. There's your workout. I love that. I think that's fast. That's a great workout. But what happened is, as always, and you know what, Pat, this question our discussion brings us right back to this idea of moderation. Yeah, there was guys doing the bench press back then because all they had was one implement. So once you've deadlifted 110 pounds, 50 kilos, it's not that hard. So then you clean it. After you clean it and press it, then you press it 10 times. Then you press it 50 times. Then you try it one-handed. And then you try it one-handed in a windmill because you only have the one implement. So, and then I'll do a Turkish get-up with it, or what they used to call it, just a get-up. And that is how people used to progress. But now that we have equipment that selectorizes machines, or you can add and subtract plates, there's not a big need for those kinds of things.
Mm-hmm.
When all we originally had was the 3 first kettlebells, the 16, the 24, and the 32, and I kind of wish we still were that way, people would talk a lot more like 1930s lifters. Okay, I need to master this weight. And so guys to prep to clean the 32, if you recall, would clean it and hold it. They would clean it, use both hands, put it overhead and hold it. And then they would bring it down as slow as they can. And then after a few weeks, they would actually press it because they had been training themselves to press the 32. I always thought that was, there was real value in that. There's a lot of value in fixed weight training. The late John McKeon, he just died, in September. He was a big believer that as a lifter, he would get ready for his meets by just lifting one load in his prep cycle, which is just, but the idea was, you keep coming in, you lift that load, you practice, and then you get better. Yeah. James, does he disagree? Oh, no. Oh, no, it's Jacob. Okay.
Jacob says, do what you can consistently do that elicits progressive adaptation.
Well, yeah, that's the whole conversation. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And like anything else, it depends on what your goal is, right? If you just have the goal of being a world-class bench presser, there's no way around it. You're just going to have to bench press, right?
And
But
we're
if
not going to, there's no argument, and we're perfectly fine with that. Yeah.
Yeah. But if the goal is, hey, I want to be a generalist, I want to be robustly fit, I want to hit some reasonable fitness standards, and I want to be as injury free as is reasonable and practical and possible. Again, I don't like to set the unrealistic expectation that you're not ever going to get a little something something. I mean, that's just life, right? I think you're gonna get hurt if you don't do anything. You're gonna get hurt if you do things, right? So and you're probably more likely to get hurt if you don't do things, actually. So the thing is, what can we do in terms of risk management? It's not about risk elimination. It's about risk management. And then when it comes to building, hey, there's something about that in that little green book that Dan's holding from a very shadowy bearded author.
Yes.
And yeah, if you want to build, upper body strength, which is, I think, a good thing to have as a general fitness enthusiast, there's a range of options here. And bench press is one option, but then we can have that conversation of, is this the best option in terms of risk reward and efficiency and all this or that? I don't barbell bench press anyways. I do some stuff with dumbbells at different angles, but I don't barbell bench press because I've got pretty good shoulders, and it might actually be related to that vent press injury I have, Dan.
Oh,
I have to think about if those things are tied together. They actually might be. I don't know if I've made that connection before, but anyways, long story short, barbell bench press just pisses my right shoulder off, right? So I just don't do it. I know it's sort of asking for trouble, but military presses, dips feel great. So for me, the bench press is just something that the barbell one takes sort of a backseat to other lifts, because for me, it's just what I get out of it versus, what I'm risking with it. Just that ratio isn't there for me. Right. Mm-hmm.
well, I mean, I've got an Olympic lifting meet coming up in 2 weeks. And I mean, the risk to benefit for me as a 65-year-old Olympic lifter, I have a hard time. I mean, if you were to sit me down, as my therapist, and make me lay down, like, and show me some ink blots, part of what would happen is I don't know how well I can defend the fact that I still Olympic lift.
Well, let me talk about that, Dan, because I think this is important. I don't want people to think that we're like some sort of pansies or whatever, right?
Pansies.
The idea here is like, look, if this is important to you and this is a goal and this like gives you a great enthusiasm and lets you like develop virtue and discipline and fortitude, like there is more to life than just not having a pissy shoulder, right? Like, don't get me wrong, right? I've been a lifelong martial artist. There's risk to that, and I've gotten hurt from it. But what I get out of that as a whole person is totally worth it. It's been totally worth it. Now, I'm not crippled from the neck down. If that happened, maybe I'd change my mind on it. But so far, that's totally worth it. And same thing, like if you are wanting to be a high performance athlete and you understand this is the cost, right? This is what I'm willing to pay. That is a totally, reasonable conversation to have. The problem is a lot of people train like that without any realistic hope of ever being a high performance athlete, for one thing, right? God bless them. And just don't know better. And we're just trying to show that there's different ways that you can think about this is all, right? Yeah.